So we're back in summer, right? Hot days, ice cream, maybe a trip to the pool. But during the night for us ant keepers, or for me at least, I go ant hunting. Right after sundown, when wind speeds are below 9 miles per hour, I go to the park where the lights attract a plethora of different species. Near these lights, or should I say, on the sidewalk near these lights, is where I find queen ants. It looks like tonight is the night for Brachymyrmex patagonicus elates and D elates. Right now, it's nuptial flight season, meaning queen elates fly out of the colony they were born in, mate, and found their colonies. Now, for my European viewers who haven't yet found any queens or are wanting to buy queen ants, I would give Ants Norway a shot. This isn't a paid sponsor, but they did reach out to me through email, wanting me to promote their new website. Over there they sell queen ants, substrate, and also other accessories. As I said, they are new, so I haven't heard of them before, but give them a try. From this footage right here, it's late June, and all I could find is Brachymyrmex patagonicus, which is pretty much the only species that I could find in my area. I usually find a lot more species during July and August. Either way, I'm going to catch these queens so I can make some multi-queen colonies, as this species is highly polygynous. By the way, if you want to know some tips and tricks for finding queen ants, check the iCard at the top right of the screen. I found a Solenopsis xyloni colony at this other park that I went to that was getting ready for a flight. As I went to the tennis courts, they barely had any queens on the ground, but there were probably thousands of bugs flying everywhere. And when I was looking on the ground, I saw this huge dead bug that was probably the size of my hand. Comment if you know what it is, because that is the largest bug I have ever seen. But when I went home, I also placed out my blacklight before I went to the park to see if I could catch anything else. Checking my blanket that I placed my blacklight on, all I could see were a lot of beetles and moths, but luckily there was one queen, and it was a Crematogaster elate. Looks like it's the same species that I had caught about 2 years ago, so I'm really excited to see if it will lay eggs. And that pretty much wraps up the end of this night. Not too shabby. A day later, all of the Brachymyrmex queens had laid eggs, and their gasters had gotten larger. For one of the colonies, I put together 3 queens, and they have already spread out their eggs, but one has a pile, as seen being tended by one of the queens. This sometimes happens with more than 2 queens, where they don't form an established pile in the founding stage. And usually, they produce more eggs and place them in that pile afterward. So now, it's been 3 days since I've caught the Brachymyrmex queens. I've also combined 2 of the queens to form a colony, and they already have a good batch. One of the queens died, however, which is a really rare occurrence for me since they have a high mortality rate. But with the eggs already laid by the dead queen, I'm going to brood boost another colony with the eggs. Okay, enough with my finds, let's take a look at what I found during a trip to the forest. The one thing that you would have to look for is rocks that were under the sun and weren't fully buried under the ground. This is because colonies move their brood to these warmer spots to help them grow quicker. And actually, the first rock that I lifted out of the ground had a colony under them. They look like Brachymyrmex depilis with about 50 workers, and just as I suspected, they had moved their brood under this rock, which was under the sun to help develop their growing eggs. After that find, I didn't find as much going on under the other rocks that I had found. Or none at all. This rock here was under a beam of light, like those scenes in movies. But to my disappointment, nothing was under there. I also came across some open tree trunks, which can be a clear sign of carpenter ants. This one had bunches of broken bark pieces, but no ants in sight. Overall, I found about 3 to 4 different colonies under some rocks.
That's a lot.
And there sure were a lot under them. Overall, the best find so far happened on the 25th of July. About 6 different species flew, with the majority being Camponotus or Crematogaster. If you can tell, there are some drones in the test tubes, and one of these drones hopefully has mated as one of the queens took off her wings as soon as I saw the drone dying. When I was catching these queens, I didn't have as many test tubes, but either way, I didn't see any other queens that had looked like they had mated. So these 8 queens were the best ones that I could find that I had caught. Now let's go ahead and take a closer look at each of the queens. Right here is Camponotus festinatus, a type of carpenter ant. I finally caught some more of these queens after 2 years since I caught the first queen of this species. With them are drones to maximize the chances of them being able to mate. Really looking forward to seeing a colony of these guys. Now my last queen removed 2 of her wings, but it also looks like she has a few mites on her. I don't think these are parasitic mites, but either way, I'll see if they'll get off of her if I put her in a tubs and tubes setup. Now let's move on to some other species. Not exactly sure what this one is, but my fellow Instagrammers have said it could be Solenopsis invicta or a dark form of Solenopsis xyloni. I've never heard of these dark forms, but if you just look at the characteristics, this queen does fit Solenopsis. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section. Here's a new species I've caught, which is Pheidole gilvescens. If you've seen my wild ants video on a colony of this species, I recorded some of the workers. Very small ants. I'm also assuming it's this species because of how many colonies there were around the area I had found her. By the time you guys have seen this video, she already has a batch of eggs, so I'm hoping that I'll have my own Pheidole colony after my previous Pheidole colony had sadly died off. The next queen is the first dialate of the species Solenopsis xyloni I've caught this year. A very fast growing species for sure. And finally, the last queen I have caught, a Crematogaster vermiculata elate. Now, I don't think this queen has mated, but I'll keep her in case my doubts are contradicted. And And when I thought it couldn't get even better than this, I found even more queens on the last day of July. But literally on the ground, everywhere I looked, I could find so many Brachymyrmex. There was just so many on the ground. What I did find was some other species that I haven't seen before, including some termites. And now I actually put these termites inside a water bottle since I didn't have any other test tubes to put them in. But I will go ahead and make a setup for them. And here's their little test tube setup. I'm planning on using them as feeders, but we'll see what happens in the future. To minimize the chances of them being able to escape, I also put in a huge block of cotton inside of their test tube, and I also placed them inside of a cubes and tube setup. Now if you're planning on keeping termites for yourself, I would highly recommend to put them inside one of these setups too, especially with a lid. I also used Nordic Ant's tutorial on making a DIY setup for keeping termites inside of a test tube, and I'll link that video in the description if you want to check it out for yourself. But the first catches that I had found were Solenopsis xyloni. Those are pretty boring already. I already explained them about a week ago. I put one in a water bottle too since I didn't have any other spare test tubes. And then along with them, I also found some Dorymyrmex bicolor. Now I haven't seen these guys since last year, and I'm so happy that I was able to catch some more Dorymyrmex bicolor queens since I thought that I missed their flights. So I caught 2 elates and also 1 dielate. And now one thing that I noticed about this species, or genus actually, they clean themselves very extensively, and you can also see this with the other queens that I caught of a different species known as Dorymyrmex insanus. I haven't seen these guys in 2 years actually, and I think I caught one of these queens back in July or August of 2017, and that one had wings and was also infertile, so I'm happy that I was able to catch these 2 queens, and hopefully they both have mated and will lay eggs. One of them is already starting to take off their wings, or took off one of their wings, so I'm hoping for the best for that queen. And they too also like to clean themselves a lot. Now, actually the first queens that I caught of this night was of this species, Solenopsis molesta, also known as thief ants. Now these queens are pretty golden and yellow, so I really like their coloration. I saw about 7 of these queens on the ground, but I managed to only catch 4 since the other ones had wings, and I caught only 1 dielate since that was the only one that I could find. And now we're on the last set of queens that I've caught, and also the most exciting ones in my opinion. These ones are Pheidole queens. Now I actually thought these ones were drones from afar, but as I checked closer just to make sure, they were Pheidole queens and I was able to catch them. And they're also, I think, a different species too, compared to the Pheidole gilvescens queens that I caught, and also the previously known Pheidole xerophila queens. I think I mistaken that species, and it could actually be Pheidole bicolor, but I'm not too sure, so I'm gonna have to edit those titles on my previous videos. But if you guys know what the species of these Pheidole queens, please let me know in the comments. When I put them up to the light and used macro, I noticed that there were 2 different species that I had caught. One of them actually has a broader kind of jaw and is lighter in color, while the other one is like my Pheidole xerophila queens, or misidentified Pheidole xerophila queens. And I think these set of darker ones are a different kind of species compared to the other one that I had caught. But But there we have it, my anting experience of July 2019. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Overall, a lot of cool species this month, and I encourage you to go anting at this moment if the weather conditions are good for you. Looking forward to next month too, as that is when I'll hopefully see more of these species. As always, my name is Endurance, another fellow ant YouTuber, and I'm off again.